Hey guys, it's Mrs. Marquette. Today we're starting our last chapter of the semester, it's chapter 10, which is all conic sections. This chapter is a real deviation from what we've been doing the rest of the semester, talking about simplifying and solving and factoring. In this chapter we're going to be doing a lot of graphing. So we're going to graph some circles, graph parabolas, graph some other conic sections, and then see what different features of the graph or different numbers in an equation of a graph do to the graph itself. So the first conic section that we're going to start with is a circle. So you guys have seen circles before, but you've probably never graphed a circle in Algebra 1 or geometry. So here is the standard equation of a circle. We have x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. Here h and k, those are just numbers. X and y are always x and y. And then r is also just a number. Okay, so here's a very simple equation of a circle. X squared plus y squared equals 9. And they ask us to go ahead and graph the circle using the coordinate plane. So I want to show you the graph of said circle. I have x squared plus y squared equals 9. If I look, so notice this is a circle. Okay, I also have some points on this circle. I've got 0, 3, 3, 0, 0, negative 3, and negative 3, 0. Think about plugging those points into the equation. If I had, again, 0, 3, 3, 0, 0, negative 3, and negative 3, 0. If I plug those into the equation, I would get 0 plus 3 squared is 9, which is true. 0 plus negative 3 squared is 9, which is true. 3 squared plus 0 equals 9, also true. And negative 3 plus 0, or squared plus 0 is 9, which is true. So this is the kind of picture that I get. I get these 3 points, or these 4 points rather. And at the very center, we have that point 0, 0. So we're going to call this the center and label it 0, 0. And then the circle is all of the points on the outside. So when we graph circles, we are always going to be first graphing the center, and then we're going to be graphing 4 points on the circle. And the way that we graph these 4 points on the circle is we use the radius, okay? So this radius, if you remember back from geometry, the radius is the distance from the center of the circle to any point on the circle. So I can draw this is a radius, or this is a radius, or really this is a radius. So if I look from the center to any point on the circle, the easy ones to count and see how long the radius is going straight out horizontally or vertically to any point on the circle. So here I can see my radius is 3. So instead of just like graphing this on Desmos or graphing it on any other sort of calculator on the computer, what we're going to do is we're going to first of all find the center, and then we're going to use the radius to graph 4 points on the circle. Okay, so if I look at what is the radius of a circle having the equation x squared plus y squared equals r squared, what I'll tell you right now is that this r squared is going to have everything to do with the radius. If you know what that number is, we can take that number, take a square root, and that's going to give us r, and r for radius. Okay, so notice how that worked here. I had x squared plus y squared equals 9. That was a 9, and then my radius was 3. So if I take a square root of 9, I just get 3. So that's going to work for all of these circles below. So I've got A through D. X squared plus y squared equals 49. I have a center at 0, 0. My r is the square root of 49, or 7. B, I have x squared plus y squared equals 100. My center is 0, 0. My r is the square root of 100, or 10. C, I get the square root of 7. I can't actually break that down. That's just the square root of 7. I could also say that that's about 2.6 if you plug that into your calculator. And the last one is x squared plus y squared equals 49 over 4. So r is the square root of 49 over 4, which the square root of 49 is 7, the square root of 4 is 2, so I get 7 halves, which is 3.5. I take any of those answers. So that's how you find the radius. It doesn't matter what's going on the left side of the equation. These numbers are the ones that tell you about your radius, which is going to be helpful for graphing your circle. And the next thing we have is x plus 2 squared plus y minus 1 squared equals 9. So I want to graph this. Let's go back to Desmos. I've now got x plus 2 parentheses squared, and then y minus 1 parentheses squared equals 9. So it still equals 9. So my radius is still going to be 3, but notice that I've moved over, it looks like to the left and then up. Probably those numbers, this plus 2 and the minus 1, are going to make a big difference. So let's just graph a point. So if I just graph the point 2 in the x and 1 in the y, maybe that's the center, but it looks like that is really on that right side of your graph. But what if I change these? Oh, and this was a negative 1. So let's actually switch. Let's go -2 and +1. If I look at this circle, now that actually is the center. So notice what's happened. I've got the -2 in the x, so I've got x plus 2, and then I have the 1 with the y minus 1, and my center value is a 1. If you go back to the very original equation of a circle, I've got these negatives, x minus h, y minus k. Remember that when you have a negative in the equation, we have to go opposite for our actual point. Okay, so every time you see the h and the k in parentheses, you know that the original equation has a minus. So the center of the circle, I've got the plus, so my x value is -2. I've got the minus, so my y value is +1. And then the radius, this is r squared, so my radius is 3. So I'll go ahead and graph. I go to -2, +1. And then I'm going to count up and down 3, right and left 3. And then graph my circle. Okay, again, this is a sketch of a circle, so it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just got to be kind of close to what a circle should look like. So what it should not look like is it should not look kind of like a square or a diamond. It definitely should be curved. You should know what a circle, what the shape is. So generally speaking, if we've got x minus h squared, y minus k squared equals r squared, I'm going to use those negatives to be opposite, so h and k, and then my radius will be r. This is what will be given to you on your guide. So this is something that you can use. I don't need you to memorize that, but I do need you to be able to use that h and k and your r. So here are two. I would pause the video and try these two, but I'll do them right here. So my center of this circle, there's clearly no number with x, so our number for nothing is 0. And then the opposite of -3 is 3. My radius is 5, because this 25 is r squared, so my r is just 5. Then 6, my center is 1, 7, because I've got an opposite and an opposite. And then the square root of 20, if I say that this is r, then I can actually break down 20. Think about back in chapter 7. So I've got 2 radical 5. Okay, it's also 4.47 if you plug it into your calculator, but they do want you to give exact answers or leave the square roots. Okay, so we'll just use simplified radical form. So that's if you are asked to find the center and radius. We can also go the opposite way. So sometimes you will be asked to write the equation of a circle. So I've got the equation here, and I have my qualities, my characteristics in numbers 7 through 10. So I've got the center is 0, 0, the radius is 5. So if I think about doing x minus something squared, y minus k squared equals r squared, I can actually plug in these numbers. So I plug in 0, plug in 5. And then I can simplify. X minus 0 is just x, so x squared. Y minus 0 is just y, so y squared, equals 25. Okay, so we'll keep going on these. My center is negative 3, 2. My radius is 4. So I've got x minus something squared, y minus k squared equals r squared. So I get a negative 3, a 2, and a 4. So I get x plus 3 squared. Y minus 2 squared equals 16. So hopefully that makes sense why when we have a negative, we're going to flip it because minus a negative actually does give you a positive. I need you to go all the way to the point where it's simplified in order to have a good final answer. Number 9, the kind of interesting thing about this one is when I do x minus 1 squared, y minus 2 squared equals the square root of 3 squared, is the square root of 3 squared is actually just 3 because my square root and my square will cancel. So in the end, I just get 3. And the last one, I should get x and then negative 4, I do the opposite, so x plus 4 squared. Y, I do the opposite, so y plus 7 squared. And then 2 squared is 4. And then these last two, again, these are ones like the ones you've already done before, so maybe pause the video and try these ones. My center is negative 1, 2, because we do the opposite. My radius is 3. And when I graph, I go over 1, up 2, and then I'm going to go 3 in all 4 easy directions. Okay, we only graph those 4 points because they're the easy points to graph. Really, if I wanted to be super accurate, I could measure out 3. Maybe I'd be a little off there. But having 4 points are good anchor points, so you know that you're roughly the right radius. Then number 12, I've got 3, 0, this time because we have opposite, and then there's no number with y, and my radius is 1. It's important to write down the center because if we just wrote down 3, it's hard to know which direction to go. So I'll go 1, 2, 3, and then 1 in all 4 easy directions. And it's just a little circle. So that's the kind of stuff I'm going to expect you to be able to do on a quiz or on a test. The last 2 examples are actually what happens when I'm not in the nice form. Okay, so the nice form is x minus h squared, y minus k squared equals r squared with a plus in the middle of x minus h and y minus k. But here I've got this extra 4y. So I want to really make it look like our easy way of writing our equation. So what I need to do is I need to complete the square. So it's been a while probably since we've done completing the square, but let me jog your memory. We've got x squared, doesn't have anything extra, but y squared plus 4y, I need to do plus blank. I need to complete the square so that I can write it with a y minus k. Right? So then I've got to think about, all right, I've got x squared, but what I really want is to have something squared. Okay, so it's going to be y plus, and in order to complete the square, I need to take that b value, that 4, and take 4 divided by 2 and square it, and that's what's going to go in my blank. So 4 divided by 2 is 2, squared is 4, so I put 4 in both blanks. And then to factor y squared plus 4y plus 4, I have y plus 2 squared, because 2 plus 2 is 4, 2 times 2 is 4. And then I get 4. Now that's not a whole ton of work, and now I'm in the nice, easy way to graph my circle. So I get 0, negative 2 for my center, and my radius is 2, okay, because the square root of 4 is 2. So my center again, I'll just move these down. Center again is 0, negative 2, radius is 2, and I can graph. So 0, negative 2 is right here, and then using the radius, looks like that. Okay. Number 14 is very similar. We've got a lot of stuff going on. What I really want to do is get the x's all together so I can complete the square on the x's, get the y's all together so I can complete the square on the y's, and then finish off. So I'm going to write this in order, x squared minus 10x, and then do a plus blank because I don't know what's going to complete the square yet. And then y squared minus 2y plus blank. And then this 10 is extra. So I'm going to subtract 10 on both sides in order to just be able to deal with each part separately. So I'll do negative 10 plus blank because I'm going to be adding two things to the left, so I need to add two things to the right. Okay. So complete the square on the x's. I divide negative 10 by 2 and then square it. Negative 10 divided by 2 is negative 5, and then squared it is 25, so I add 25 to both sides. And then when I complete the square on the y's, negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1, squared is 1, so I add 1 to both sides. So then I get x minus 5 squared, because negative 5 plus negative 5 is negative 10. Negative 5 times negative 5 is 25. And then y minus 1 squared, because negative 1 plus negative 1 is negative 2. Negative 1 times negative 1 is 1. And then negative 10 plus 25 plus 1 is 16. Right? So again, now this is the part that we should be familiar with. Our center is 5, 1, because we take the opposites of those numbers. And then our radius is just 4, because the square root of 16 is 4. Go ahead and graph it, 5, 1. And then in all directions, I go 4. And I think I'm off one right here. So just make sure that you're consistent with your radius. If your circle looks a little off, it probably is. Okay, trust your judgment, recount. And then you can draw a good circle. Okay, so the main things I'm going to be wanting you to make sure that you can do is, given an equation, be able to give the center and radius, and be able to graph the circle. And then, given the center and radius, be able to give a good equation, right? Completing the square is another skill that's good for us that we'll be using more and more as we go further into math classes. But again, the main things that I want you to know is about your center and radius and how to use those. All right, go ahead and try those practice problems and have an excellent day.